you are going to have some sort of irresistible premise, some sort of external conflict that's going to take them on a journey. But who they are before the story even begins, that is so vital to understand before even going into the story, because that's what's going to make your characters feel lived in. We're sisters, best friends, and authors on a mission to help you stoke your creative fire and live the life of your dreams. We believe that purpose fuels passion and that creativity is your secret weapon for mass construction. There's never been a better time to bless the world with your dream realized. You're listening to The Kate and Abbie Show. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Kate and Abbie Show. Today we are talking all about Preptober, because for many of you preparing for NaNoWriMo 2024, you are about to embark on an amazing adventure, which is writing a novel in 1 month. NaNoWriMo has become a tradition for a lot of writers. Every year we come together in November to write a book, or at least write 50,000 words, and challenge ourselves to make a habit of writing and to sit down every day and commit to our creativity. So in this episode, we are talking about how to prepare for NaNoWriMo, or really any time when you are challenging yourself to write a novel. So this could apply to any time of year if you are about to embark on the adventure of planning a novel. We're going to explore all of the vital must-have ingredients in this episode, what to prepare about your book ahead of time, and then also what to prepare about your life and your mindset ahead of time as well. So lots to dive into in this episode. Hopefully you have something yummy to drink and maybe a notebook to take some notes, and let's get into this. But before we get into it, we first want to thank our sponsors, who are you guys. You're our patrons. You help make this show possible. So if you get value out of this podcast and you enjoy listening, go to patreon.com/The Kate and Abbie Show and help us keep it alive and free of interruptions. Your support helps us so much, and we value and appreciate every one of you. And we also invite you guys on Patreon to join our exclusive monthly live streams, which are only available in the Patreon community. So if you want to join those live hangouts every month, definitely check out the Patreon, and the link is below this video as well. Also, while you're down there, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and make sure you're subscribed to Kate's channel as well, because we post the podcast on both channels. Okay, without further ado, let's get into this episode. So, when it comes to plotting, or rather planning your novel, I know all writers are different with this. Like, Kate and I have very different planning procedures when it comes to like our practice, our writing practice, and how we plan our books is very different from each other. Right. I'm more of a hardcore plotter, and Kate doesn't really need as many notes and plots to get started. So it's different for every writer, but Kate and I agreed that like every writer going into a novel project should have a few things clear in their mind about the story that they're about to write. And those 3 things I like to call sort of the WWW method or rule, which is the who, the what, and the why. So we want to start today by kind of like breaking down what these 3 things are and how to develop each one, even if you just want to like very minimally develop your ideas and not do a lot of plotting. So first, the who, or the characters. So this is about like who the story is about. Who do you want to write a story about? What sort of character do you want to embody, and why are you interested in bringing this character to life and taking them on a journey? I feel like that's one of the most important places to start with a story, because it's not so much about what happens, like we will talk about the what, but it's more about who it happens to.
Right, that's really what's spearheading the whole thing.
Right.
That's what we always talk about this, and you guys know from hearing it on the podcast. But you start with the character. Why? Who are these people? And really thinking about them in terms of people, not just flat characters on a page, but actual people that other human beings are going to be able to read and relate to.
Right.
And why does it matter to them? What's going on in their lives? And that's going to really spearhead into the you know, who they are is going to spearhead into what's going on.
Right.
And why it matters to them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people start they don't start with that. They start with the what. They start with the plot, and they're like, okay, what's going to happen in this story? What's going to, make this interesting? And they immediately go to like a premise or a plot or some kind of external conflict without taking the time first to think about, okay, who is it going to happen to? And I think the who is the most important thing to think about. Of course, you need a good plot and you need strong themes, but the most important thing is the characters, like you're saying, who are these people before the story even begins? Because you are going to have some sort of irresistible premise, some sort of external conflict that's going to take them on a journey. But who they are before the story even begins, that is so vital to understand before even going into the story, because that's what's going to make your characters feel lived in, like they have been here all along. They've had these desires and fears and fatal flaws for many years before we've shown up to page 1 to see them begin this adventure.
Right, exactly. And it's that lived in feel that makes it so easy to read, really. Right. And it doesn't feel like we're just inventing this as we go. It feels like this is an entire world that's been here, like you're saying.
Yeah. And that's what makes it feel like it's, complex and layered and dynamic and not just...
It adds to the dynamic of the story so much.
Because otherwise it's like we could be, like I always say, we could be seeing these things happen to any character in your story.
Right.
So first identifying who are these characters and why does this journey that they're about to go on specifically matter to them because of their desires, fears, and misbeliefs. What is the internal conflict that they're dealing with before we even show up on page 1?
Yeah.
And the next thing to figure out is the what, or the plot. So this comes off of the who, like you were just saying, where we have these characters who are already primed to be pushed outside their comfort zone, but we know what's going to push them outside their comfort zone because we know what the limits of their comfort zone are.
Right.
And if you don't know those limits, then it's not anything particularly meaningful to them, right?
Right.
Like,
so getting a glimpse of like who are they in their natural environment?
Yes.
What does their day-to-day life look like? Not that you have to start the book with, the day in the life of the character,
right.
But what are they afraid of? That's really what establishes a comfort zone, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
I'm comfortable with these things, and then beyond that, I'm afraid of or anxious about those things.
Right.
And so once we establish that zone, we can see clearly what the character is afraid of, what would intimidate them, what would cause them to be anxious, what would challenge them in a new way.
Yeah, exactly. And so starting from that place, knowing who they are and what would challenge them, what would push them outside their comfort zone. Well, now we have great, prompts to ask ourselves to bring us to the what, which is the plot, which is the external conflict. So if you know what's going to push your character outside their comfort zone at the start of the story and what is going to force them to make an impossible choice between pain versus pain, where they have to make that decision to avoid their fear and try to pursue their goal, that thing that they believe will make them happy, that is really the whole catalyst of this journey that they're going to go on.
Right. That's like really what an inciting incident is.
Right.
And you talk about this in so much of your teaching, is it's something that's going to propel them out of their comfort zone. It's like the ultimate challenge, that impossible decision. Am I going to stay with what I'm comfortable with? Or am I going to like launch myself into the unknown and see what happens? See if I can get that thing that I ultimately want. Even if it's something that won't ultimately bring them happiness, but at the moment they think it will, that's the thing that's going to spearhead their exit from the comfort zone and get them out doing some things that they never would have done before. And that's the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Usually the whole story, like if you think of any story that you like, it's probably following a character working through a challenge or something that has sparked big change in their life, or even small change. But it's always something, there's a movement and there's a trajectory.
Right.
Your character is on this journey, and that's the arc. That's where we start.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. And so you can ask yourself, what is this journey that I want to take my character on, and how are they going to transform as a result of the journey? And that, I think, will spark a lot of ideas for what external things will happen to them, what sort of obstacles might come up in their path, what plot twists might occur. Because when you're thinking about it from this reference point of why it's going to matter to them, then it's not just like, oh, I have to throw, random obstacles and plot twists and bad circumstances at them. You're thinking about it more through the lens of like, how can we make it specifically meaningful to them because of what they're afraid of,
right,
because of what they've always struggled with, and because of their insecurities and their vulnerabilities. So it's personal to them, because otherwise it could just be, a disaster that happens to anybody, and anybody might react the same way. But you want it to be specifically meaningful for your protagonist. And that's what makes stories so interesting, right? Because it's like a plot could be very simple, but depending on who it's happening to, it could be the most entertaining and emotionally engaging story, even if it's a very simplistic plot because of who it's happening to.
Right, exactly. And oftentimes some of like the best love stories out there are very simple premises, but because we dive so deeply into the character, we connect so deeply with the character and why it is important to them, why it's challenging to them, why it's terrifying to them. Those are all very human emotions that we can easily connect with and look at things in our own life and see like, yeah, I felt that way too. We can relate. Right. We can relate to that even if it's not the same circumstance. So that's what we're really tapping into, like human psychology, human emotion. And when you do that, you're making your character so much more real to your reader. When your reader has that moment of identifying with the character. Right. I know we've both received emails and notes in the past of readers saying like, oh, I could so identify with, fill in the blank character. And that's always so heartwarming to hear because that's exactly what you want as a writer. You want your reader to be able to see themselves reflected in the character. And you do that by giving them real human struggles and emotions.
Yeah. Well said. And finally, the last W here is the why, or the theme. And the theme is something that you can sort of unpick and look into and sort of expand upon even after you've written the book. But I like to identify sort of the main theme before I start writing so that I really can see clearly what is this character's journey going to lead my reader to think about. What are the ideas they're going to be left with after they finish the book? What are maybe some questions that they're going to start asking about life or about themselves or the human experience that they may not have asked if they hadn't read this book? And to me, this is a really, it's kind of like, it's something that not a lot of people talk about enough, I don't think, but it's something that propels you so much through the writing process, is knowing the why. Because if you don't know your story's why, you can easily get discouraged, especially if you see similar books out there that seem like they have similar plots or similar characters. You can think to yourself like, does the world really need my book? Is this unique enough? Is this good enough? But if you have a clear why and an understanding of why it matters to you and the big ideas that you want to share with the world, suddenly this becomes very personal and emotionally charged for you. And you have, at least I've experienced, and you can tell me if you've experienced this, like a deeper sense of purpose in writing it, knowing that someone's going to read this and walk away with this idea, and I'm going to be able to, share these big questions and ideas with somebody else through this story. And that just brings it to like this different level of purpose. And I think that, everyone will get something different out of your story, but knowing ahead of time why it matters to you will help you so much to weave that meaning and significance into your story.
I agree. And it helps you stay anchored in why you're writing it in the first place, like Abbie's saying. And there's like always going to be stories that look like your story out in the world because there's really, a lot of stories are similar. I remember hearing someone say, I think it was a film director, saying something about how there's really only 7 stories or something, just kind of going off the fact that a lot of plots can be similar. But what makes them different is the characters' internal conflict, why they're doing what they're doing, and making that individual so unique that no one else is going to be able to write that character the way you write that character. When you think about when you hear people talk about their favorite books, their favorite movies, their favorite TV shows, they're never like, oh, that's my favorite plot device. Like when, these certain things aligned in the plot and it was just very satisfying. And, I really loved these certain techniques of how they stitch. It's like, no, they love the character. Oh, I loved when the character had this moment or this realization or when this happened for the character, this huge moment, this aha moment, whatever it is. It's always the character. You're never like, oh, I loved when, this scenery came together with like this certain, period of time going by. It's like, no, we are invested in the characters. We're excited about the characters. We're rooting for the characters. That's who we're identifying with. And so, if you can really sink your teeth into who is your character, what are they struggling with? What are they dealing with? That's going to make your story so much more memorable and so much more relatable.
Yeah. So true.
And it's gonna make you want to write it more too.
Yeah. And all those things tie together, it's not, they're not really separate things. They're like a woven tapestry of the why, the what, and the who, and all these things kind of interweave with each other. So you don't even have to think about them as separate things. Like just brainstorm, maybe write down your answers to some of these prompts and these questions. Ask yourself, what are the big ideas I want to share through this story? Why do these ideas matter to me? And then ask yourself these other questions about your plot and your character and just like your characters and see what comes to mind. And you can plot as much or as little as you need to. I always like to say, however much you feel you need to feel confident to start that first draft. And that will be different for every writer. For some writers, you might not need any notes. For other writers, you might need a bullet point outline. For others, you may need a really detailed outline or use a story structure, something like that. But like we're saying in this episode so far, everything, the most important things in your story are your characters and understanding why what's happening matters to them specifically. And as long as you have that, you have, in my opinion, a really good foundation to start with. And the other things that you may not have sorted out completely yet can always be sorted out later, either in the second draft or in the revision stage of things. If you feel that you are passionate about this story and you are just ready to charge into this adventure, this challenge, then go for it.
Yeah. Because like you always say, like the rest of the story kind of writes itself.
Yes.
And that sounds like, how is that possible? The rest writes itself. But it really does, because all you have to then ask yourself is like, okay, what's the next logical thing for my character to do based on where they're at in their own headspace? Yeah. Like, what would be the next thing that I would do if this was my headspace and that was my circumstances? And it's like, oh, well, obviously this. And so it's just like, then there's the next step. And then you just ask yourself that again. And then there's the next step. And before you know it, you're like 40,000 words into a book and it's all there. All those different threads are coming together because they're coming from the core of who that character is, not just like, well, what's happening and anyone would react this way. So it doesn't really matter who it's happening to.
Right. So true. Which kind of leads into our next point, which is about expectations in the writing process and not putting too much pressure on yourself during writing the first draft, because this is an explorative process. It should be a creative, fun process. And as you go into the first drafting stage of things, try not to set your expectations so high to such a level of perfection that you don't enjoy the journey. Because it's so important to have that level of, or that mindset rather, of creativity and play and fun so that you can really tap into like that genius level creativity and not be, putting the pressure on yourself and feeling like this is a task I have to complete.
Yeah. Do you want to explain that genius level creativity a little bit? Because I know you have some thoughts behind that.
Yeah, well, I remember I've shared on my channel before a study that was done in the 1960s on creativity in children. And it was a really fascinating study that this professor conducted he was doing a test for NASA, and he used this same test that he used for NASA to find innovative engineers on children at the age of 5 years old and to see how creative they were. And 98% of them scored at genius level creativity at 5 years old. And then he retested the same group of kids. I think it was like 1,000 kids or something a few years later, and the genius level creativity had dropped significantly. And then again at 15 years old, and there was only like 10% of them, I think, that were genius level creativity. And then he tested a certain number of 30-year-olds, and it was like 2% of them were at genius level creativity, right. Which just goes to show you that when you are in that young mindset of thinking like a child, basically, the childlike creativity, he called it, this professor called it divergent thinking versus convergent thinking. So divergent thinking is when you are sort of testing out new ideas and thinking outside the box and trying things that have never been tried before, or maybe have been tried before, but you're not thinking about the fact that they've been tried and they failed. You're just like, I'm going to try this because, you're thinking outside the box. Whereas convergent thinking is testing your ideas against things that have been done before and sort of judging yourself and judging your ideas based on, oh, that didn't work or that failed for that person.
Right.
So that's kind of the pattern of thinking that we get into as we grow up and we grow out of this childlike.
And it's all really mechanisms to sort of stop ourselves from creating when you really think about it. Like, oh, well, that person tried something similar, so I shouldn't. Yeah. Or that person did that and it didn't work, so I shouldn't. I don't have a good feeling about this because XYZ, so I shouldn't. And so they're all sort of things that we use as mechanisms to shut ourselves down, which can be helpful in other areas of our lives that actually protect us physically, emotionally, whatever. But when it comes to what we create, it's very important to try new things, make mistakes, see what helps your heart expand and what do you feel good doing. And as time goes on, you create more and more and you find your groove. You find what you really love to create. And there has to be a lot of trial and error and making mistakes and getting your hands messy and just seeing what works. So we really need to return to that place of not comparing it, not constantly holding it up against something else to decide whether or not we should do it. We need to have that childlike, just, I feel like doing this, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to just charge right in there and enjoy myself with reckless abandon.
Recklessly.
Yes, exactly.
Recklessly, wildly.
Recklessly. Yeah.
And that is something that you talk about a lot on your channel with the Rewildest thing, which I'm going to have you talk about your writer's wellness journey in a second. But that to me ties into this so well because it is about like the detachment from the comparison thing, and like sort of muting that, muting all of the input and reconnecting to your pure wild self and like, who are you, alone
outside of all that.
Outside of all of that, and who are you like alone in a space where you can just freely create with no comparison. And I think your writer's wellness journey is like a great place for people to start doing that.
So the writer's wellness journey is like specifically created with writers in mind, helping you retrace your steps back to this playful place of creation where you can just create, you can feel creative, you can feel good in your body, good in your creative zone. And we do that through meditation, yoga, motivational talks, even recipes. I share a whole bunch of things that kind of create this holistic map to set yourself up to enter this headspace of reckless creativity, enjoying yourself, like you're saying, coming back to what we were like when we were kids. And that's also what my platform Rewildest Life is about too. It's about how we can rewild, detach from this matrix of comparison and scrolling through social media, beating ourselves up for not being productive enough. We can detach from all that and come back to a place where we're fully grounded, fully connected with our creative power. And it really is that. It's a creative power. And the Writer's Wellness Journey, you can actually get a discount right now with the discount code below, which is NaNo2024. So you can find the link to that below if you're interested in trying it out. You can also start a free trial of Rewildest Life and get inside the platform and see all the weekly content I post in there, yoga, meditations, retreats, all kinds of things to really spark your creativity and help you always come back to that place. And I think that's what you and I constantly do, is finding a bunch of little things in your daily life, whether it's yoga, meditation, taking a minute to set your writing space up, figuring out what kind of rituals you can bring into your day to make you want to write. Setting yourself up in a bunch of little ways to maximize how creative you feel.
Yeah. So true. And I think it's even more important than ever in today's world, especially like this NaNoWriMo specifically. I know some writers are boycotting Nano because of the introduction or the welcoming of AI into the Nano platform, which I've never even been officially part of the NaNoWriMo platform, but I know a lot of writers who are disappointed in this new edition with inviting AI into it. And there's a lot of differing opinions about AI on the internet, but I heard a quote the other day from a YouTube video that I thought was really cool, which was that AI should help to unlock human creativity, not replace it. And I think that more than ever, we need to tap into our human, genuine creativity,
Right.
because it's so important to do that. And it's so important to remember that, like, even if you're not, submitting your writing to the official platform, just do it for yourself. Do
Yeah.
it for the challenge,
Right.
to remind yourself that you have something special that no other human and certainly no robot can replicate.
So true.
It's something that is unique to you. And this story, these big ideas and the personal meaning behind this story in your heart is so unique and inspired. And doing whatever you can to unplug from the voices of the world and the voices of social media or comparison of any kind is so important to tap into that genuine human creativity. And that is a superpower.
It is. I think the more the world pushes towards artificial intelligence, the more we're actually going to lean on digging into ourselves to find that organic, sacred level of intelligence, creative intelligence already inside of us, because we have so much creativity that, like Abbie was saying, that genius level of creativity you were born with still lives inside of you.
Yes.
And all we have to do is strip away these layers, like old layers of paint we can chip away, and see the beautiful masterpiece that lies underneath that, just waiting to be discovered, waiting to be tapped into and aligned with. And that's really what it's all about, is every day discovering that in new ways.
Yeah, so true. And I think that's the beautiful thing about committing to your writing this coming month and every month, all the time, is that every day you get the chance to return to that inner creative voice and listen to it and ask it, okay, what do we want to make today? And that can be new every single morning. And it's such an amazing process and such an amazing journey to be on. So you're in the right place. If you're still hanging out, watching this video, listening to us right now, you are in the right place. You are with good company, and we're so happy to have you here on this journey with us. So hopefully you got a lot out of this discussion today and walked away with some good notes and things to sort of springboard off of. Again, go back to the prompts at the beginning of this video, write them down, write down your answers, or just brainstorm, take a walk, talk to yourself, sort of just talk through the answers of what you think about your who, your what, your why. And remembering, of course, not to burden yourself with expectations. Take the pressure off, enjoy some childlike creativity, this NaNoWriMo, and just see where it takes you. Create wildly and recklessly. And to sort of start that journey and rediscover that power in you, definitely check out Kate's course, the Writer's Wellness Journey, and check out get the code below. Click the link below and use the code NANO2024 to get a discount off of that course and begin your journey today. But thank you guys so much for watching this episode. Comment below and tell us what you thought. What are you going to be working on this November? We would love to hear about your work in progress. Thank you again to our amazing patrons who make this podcast possible. We so appreciate your support and value your love for this show. So if you get value out of the podcast, go to patreon.com/The Kate and Abbie Show. Thank you guys so much and see you next time. Until then,
Stay stoked
and rock on.